Hello, welcome back to the Tactica series. I'm Nathan from Serious Geeks, and today the video is going to be about the Predator battle tank. An old warhorse for Space Marines, the Predator battle tank has seen its way into many competitive army lists over the years, and at the moment in 8th edition, I still believe it has a decent place within many lists. As you can see from its datasheet, it has the standard stats for a battle tank. As you can see, it's not notably more survivable than most vehicles. It only has a toughness of 7 and 11 wounds. However, the 11 wounds at toughness 7 is still not that easy to get through with just 1 or 2 anti-tank weapons. It will require several shots from multiple sources to be able to take out. And this means that in an army with target saturation such as Rhinos, Dreadnoughts, Razorbacks, Land Raiders, Vindicators, even Repulsors, etc., you will have a very good chance of having your Predator survive. Despite the background seeming to suggest that the Predator is a main battle tank of the Space Marine Army, its real role is as a support unit to your other vehicles in that target saturation method. So what it does is it provides extra heavy weapon shots and on another platform that has to be taken out with a bit of dedication. This means that it is not going to be very good in an army list just on its own with a load of infantry. What it needs is a large number of vehicles, and in that the points value comes into its own because it's fairly cheap for what it provides. Now, if you look at the weapons choices, heavy bolter sponsons or las cannon, and then the Predator autocannon or twin link las cannon as the turret. Many people will say if you take the 3 las cannon choices, the twin linked las cannon turret and the 2 sponsons, you are basically wasting points compared to how many vehicles you can get, which are such as Razorbacks that can provide a twin link las cannon for cheaper. This I don't actually disagree with. I think in the game that is predominantly the main reason why you wouldn't take that loadout. But in 8th edition, units can actually split fire freely. There is no restriction. In previous editions there were always restrictions, I think going back as far as 3rd edition. And Predators now, that they can fire at any target they wish with any weapons, have a lot of strength in their utility. As such, what I'm going to do is talk about the actual turret weapon and then what loadout is best with said turret weapon on that Predator, as I think that is the strongest way to play these units. Starting with the twin link las cannon turret, I think the best support for this vehicle would be to give it 2 heavy bolters in the sponsons. The reason I say this is because you will have a lot of utility and a lot of firepower that can't be replaced with other units in the army as easily. As an example, 2 Razorbacks would be required to be able to do this as a minimum, and there is an argument for taking 2 Razorbacks because of target saturation. However, you're forking out a lot of points for this at this point. That Predator comes in at 145 points, compared to 2 Razorbacks that combined will come in at 197. Difference of over 50 points, which could buy you a lot of things in the army. They can get you a free apothecary, or they could go towards another unit. And if you're doing that across the board, you're wasting quite a lot of points. I don't really recommend all las cannons on a Predator because you will have a lot of sources of las cannons throughout the army list, be it on repulsors, dreadnoughts, your infantry, and it becomes a bit of a point sink in that it can be taken out fairly easily. It only has toughness of 7 and 11 wounds. Therefore, if all your anti-tank or a large number of it is in one single unit, it becomes a very easy target to choose, and the target saturation method that we're talking about becomes a little bit pointless. That's one of the strengths of the Razorback, is that they're relatively inexpensive fire platforms and you can take multiples across the board, and therefore people can't target them as easily with sure knowledge that they are taking out the right choice. The alternative version of a Predator would be to have the Predator autocannon. I am a big fan of this weapon. It has heavy 2d3 shots and a large enough range to be effective. It has damage 3, which is actually very good on any weapons platform. Unfortunately, it is only strength 7, which is still good, but it's not going to be hammering through tanks that easily, simply because a lot of said vehicles are actually going to be wounded on a 4 or more, or worse, 5 or more. However, if you do get a few extra shots through a vehicle, you will do 6 damage at a time, 3 damage. If you're really lucky, you could do 9, which is quite crippling for any vehicle within the game. If you're going to put las cannons on your Predator, this is the model I would recommend doing it for, because the Predator autocannon does have some utility in that it can fire at infantry fairly effectively. This vehicle is a bit expensive still, so if you're going to use it, which is only a partial recommendation from myself, I would definitely advise you to take other units in the army that can soak up the fire, such as the Land Raider or even a Storm Raven. My favourite build on a Predator though is the Predator autocannon and 2 heavy bolters. The heavy bolters, great utility against most targets, predominantly best at shooting infantry, but can plink off wounds of vehicles if need be, and then the actual Predator autocannon itself, which is great at mulching through heavy infantry and taking off wounds of vehicles. The multiple shots of the Predator autocannon means that when you fire all your weapons at infantry, you're not wasting any. You can easily get 4 shots from the Predator on average, alongside the 6 shots from the heavy bolters for a total of 10, which is going to be quite terminal for most infantry squads when they get hit by it. This build isn't as good as the twin link las cannon and heavy bolter build against all targets. Doesn't have as much utility in that regard. However, it is much better against heavy infantry and standard infantry, whilst still being able to contribute to your anti-tank capacity if need be. Regarding army-wide rules, the Devastator Doctrine helps quite a lot with this vehicle, particularly the actual autocannons and heavy bolters. Unfortunately, it's only for a single turn now, but the first turn they should be quite dangerous weapons on the board. Damage 3, AP -2 is very powerful on an autocannon that fires 4 or more times. When you consider the chapter tactics of the major chapters of the game, Crimson Fist seem to be the outright winner when it comes to a Predator autocannon and heavy bolters, because when you're firing at infantry squads, you will get a lot of benefits to your hit rolls. Their brothers, the Imperial Fist, will be ignoring people in cover, and also will get benefits with the bolt weapons from heavy bolters using their standard chapter tactic, Siege Masters. The Ultramarines, as ever, can fall back and shoot, although they do suffer a -1 to hit if they do so, which can compound with the -1 to hit from having a heavy weapon moving. This is obviously mitigated if you're in the Tactical Doctrine, and it's always useful to be able to put shots on the enemy if you get clipped in close combat, regardless of whether there's a minus or not. Minus shots are still better than no shots at all. Salamanders, I feel, are always big winners in this regard. They ignore the first armor penetration characteristic of -1 against them. In addition, they can also reroll a single dice to hit or wound, which can be very useful when you're firing an anti-tank weapon with such a vehicle. Iron Hands, as always, are ever tough, ignoring wounds on a 6. They also, if they do get charged in close combat, have a better ability of putting overwatch fire on the opponent. Not great, but also not bad. One thing to note, as your vehicle gets damaged, you do not have to worry as much as an Iron Hands player, because you can double the number of wounds remaining for the purposes of determining what row to use on the damage table. A Predator and a Raven Guard army will have an effective armor save of a 2+, since it is generally always going to be 12 inches or more away from the opponent. This isn't too bad, but don't expect to get much more use out of the Raven Guard chapter tactic, as it's unlikely that your model will be entirely on or within a terrain feature. However, if it is, you will enjoy a -1 to hit on that vehicle as well. Lastly, we have the Black Templars and White Scars. Unfortunately for them, their chapter tactic does very little for a battle tank such as a Predator. However, do not discard these vehicles out of hand, because they do give valuable fire support. For example, in a Black Templars army list, you may have a Land Raider Crusader and several Dreadnoughts that are coming forward towards the enemy. A bit of fire support and target saturation in a vehicle in your back line could be very useful. Lastly, just a quick word on the upgrades that this vehicle can have. There's only 2 available. One is a Hunter Killer Missile and the other a Storm Bolter. The Hunter Killer Missile is quite useful in that it enables you to have anti-tank shot early in the game to take advantage of the Devastator Doctrine. A Crack Missile with AP -3 is the equivalent of a las cannon against most vehicles, remember. This is because a las cannon has a strength of 9 and will wound a toughness 7 vehicle on a 3+, just like a strength 8 Crack Missile. Storm Bolters, as always, for 2 points, give you a reasonable amount of firepower, just to be able to plink an extra couple of shots off a vehicle or take down a couple of infantry soldiers throughout the game. Again, as I've mentioned previously, these unit upgrades are not crucial to your army, and therefore if you need to drop them to save points, I would go ahead and do so and not worry too much. If you have the points, they can help you out. If not, doesn't matter. Treat these upgrades as such and you won't be disappointed. That's it for the Predator. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe, and I will catch you all soon. Thank you.